Ms. St-Amand, if you would like to provide an introduction for the record and who you have attending with you today, it would be greatly appreciated, and then you can commence your presentation. I will remind you that we have reserved 30 minutes in total. So you can divide your presentation up accordingly, and I would recommend that you do allow time for questions so that we can learn more about your position and the information that you're providing. Thank you very much.
Merci. Bonjour, mon nom est...
Good morning, I'm Monica St-Amand. I am here with Sherry and Melanie, my sister-in-law and one of my friends. Good morning, thank you for letting me share my concerns with you this morning with this bill. My name is Monica St-Amand. I am the mother of two beautiful children, a little boy 3 years old and a 10-month-old little girl. I am part of two minority groups, the Francophone group and the group of parents who refuse to vaccinate. I thought I was safe in Canada. I thought we had freedoms. I thought that defending our right to refuse a product would always be respected. Currently, I feel like I'm in a nightmare. How can I protect my children from a company that convinced us to take our rights away? My children are in good health and they are being bullied and discriminated by today's adults. My children are in good health, but they are treated like cholera was back. Living in Canada, especially in New Brunswick, is very worrisome for me. Canada respects the informed consent. But there is no consent here. There is power, control, and dictatorship. We are living in a generation where we are allowed to do research on products that we think about using, whether it be processed products, cream, soap. I always look at all the products that are in the ingredients in those products, and if I think they are not healthy for my children, I have the right not to use them. And why is that? Because we want what's best for us, for our children, and for our health. And I did the same thing a few years ago when we started thinking about having children. Many hours and days and even years of investigation before we decided not to vaccinate. And let me add that when I say that I did some research, I am not talking about mom blogs and websites with no source. I'm talking about published articles that are peer-reviewed. I'm talking about data. I'm looking at, I'm talking about CDC's website. I'm talking about important information on epidemics and measles and whooping cough. All these that you don't find readily in the news. I'm talking about looking at archives. A great part of this information is hidden and it's hard to access unless you know what you need to look for. The reason why I'm here today is a legal reason. The current legislation does not follow informed consent, and this bill is a flagrant violation of patients and of the human rights and the Constitution and bioethics and the Canadian Medical Protection Association. As for New Brunswick, it is said that any medical treatment, including prevention, which includes immunization, and as a right as a patient, is to be informed on medical treatment and to be informed on the risks, the secondary effects, including immunization, to get a second opinion and to refuse a medical treatment, including immunization. And to get informed consent on this treatment. For a consent to be valid, the consent must be voluntary. You must accept the treatment without any influence nor intimidation by other people. There's also the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Canadian Charter, including Section 7, saying that we cannot violate this right. The Section 10 stipulates that any person deserves to exercise their freedom without any distinction nor exclusion or preference based on race, sex, gender, sexual orientation, marital status, age, religion, political convictions, language, ethnic origins, handicap, and there is discrimination when such discrimination or exclusion or preference could compromise this right. Section 11, nobody can publish a symbol with discrimination or giving consent to that. And Section 40, any person is allowed to have public education. And the Universal Declaration on Bioethics with consent says that any medical intervention for prevention, just like immunization, can only be given with the informed consent, free consent of the person in question. And the person can not consent to it at any time without prejudice. Section 3, third, the agreement of the legal representative of the person or the community in question can be sought, but in no case the group consent can substitute the person's consent. And we should respect the dignity of all humans so that they can be treated fairly. And in Section 11, when we talk about non-discrimination, it says that no individual or group should be submitted to the violation of its fundamental liberties or be stigmatized for any reason. And then there's the informed consent of the medical association that says that voluntary consent, the patient must give its consent for a treatment without coercion. So I add that our courts have several times reaffirmed that right, just like did Justice Robin in Ontario. Nobody can impose a medical treatment to our bodies without our consent. This is firmly anchored in our common law. We have very few exceptions, but the body of any person is considered as a body that cannot be, we cannot force any treatment on them, and we must have free choice. And informed consent guarantees that people can choose their medical treatment that they get, and it is not up to the doctor to decide whether a treatment, no matter which, can be administered. The Nuremberg case stipulates the individual consent. A vaccine has ingredients that will interact individually with any individual. So only the person getting the vaccine can take this risk. And so it is very important that we took into consideration the study on the safety of vaccines. Where is the study? If we had this study is not exact, and when a vaccine is added to the list, did we notice that there are more chronic diseases since we had this vaccine schedule? There was never any basis used for the schedule. We keep adding vaccines to the schedule, and this is irresponsible and dangerous. Why haven't we learned that we must fight to eliminate mercury from vaccines? Why did Health Canada approve another metal in the vaccines? And how can you prove the safety of vaccines for children who cannot talk? Can you tell that they are not feeling right, that they are feeling pain anywhere in their body? How can Health Canada prove that this doesn't happen when they're born and at any age? Can they say how long it lasts? Can a child recognize an undesirable symptom, or will they ever be able to verbalize it? Did you know that in 1950 there were 14 doses of 5 vaccines? Then we moved on to 20 doses of 7 vaccines, and now we are at 60 doses of 16 vaccines. And according to the authorities, there will be many more added. Vaccines are administered during pregnancy. The first thing that was eliminated by Health Canada is it was for all miscarriages and babies stillborn. So was there a percentage of those caused by vaccines? This is extremely important in Canada. We went from 5% to 10% of sterile people in Canada. CDC says not to give more than 1 vaccine of living viruses a day. So how many vaccines is safe? We have studies saying that a vaccine did not get the expected results when a patient actually contracted the disease for which he was vaccinated. So how can you promote a failing product? Who's responsible for this? Why get more of these products that have a high failure rate? And I say high failure rate because you do not know how many people were actually exposed. You only know about those who got sick. CDC says that people who are immunodepressed how many people who are immunodepressed received vaccines, and how many people are at risk because of their own vaccines? Everything that I will read comes from documents that I gave you. Merck is in court for fraud in the manufacturing of the HPV vaccine. Did you know that 30 Americans died when they took a medication that caused a heart attack? Did you know that GlaxoSmithKline, also a vaccine manufacturer, has paid over $3 billion in fines after having bribed doctors? Did you know that Sanofi has been convicted of fraud in multiple countries after having bribed governments and healthcare providers? Did you know that the CDC scientists have stated that fraud in scientific research is the norm? Did you know that the FDA buries evidence of medical fraud? Did you know that the FDA uses more money for promoting products than research? Did you know that between 2004 and 2014, 0 people died of measles, but 108 people died of the MMR vaccine? Did you know that 168 babies have an emergency room visit within 4 to 12 days after their 12 months MMR vaccination? So 1 in 168 babies. That's a lot more than 1 over 100 million babies. Did you know that CDC sells $5 billion a year worth of vaccines? Did you know that the study on safety of vaccines are made by the manufacturers and that they were only tested in comparison with an old vaccine? Did you know that they are tested 4.5 years? The medication is tested 4.5 years, but vaccines are only tested 4.5 days. Did you know that only 1% of vaccine adverse reaction is reported? So 99% of adverse reactions are not reported or acknowledged. Did you know that the vaccine court has paid over $4 billion due to vaccine injury and death? So if vaccines are safe, why so much money was given? Canada is the only G7 nation without a vaccine injury compensation program. Do you think that I am a parent who doesn't protect her children, or a parent who is worried when she sees such data? All the data that has not been compared, how can we ensure the safety of our children? Don't forget that before many things were approved, like lead and other things. So we must record any diagnostic after a vaccine to see if there's a trend. Do we have this database? So how can you talk about the safety of vaccines? Where is the proof that vaccines do not increase diabetes and allergies? If you administer more than one vaccine on the same day, how do you know which vaccine is the result, which reaction is the result of which vaccine? Because of the mix of vaccines, how do you know which ingredient provoked an allergic reaction? Aren't allergies the cause of death? We know that vaccines create allergies that can kill. How can the choice of vaccine does not expose a child to a known allergy? Why is my family a victim of discrimination for not having accepted this risk among others? Why accept this risk? Would you leave your child in the middle of the road hoping that your child is not going to get hit? Same thing when your doctor prescribes an antibiotic to you. You have the choice to take it or not. You know the risk, and the same reasoning should apply to vaccines. So I am opposed to the current act in New Brunswick. I'm opposed to Bill 39. Discrimination and harassing on social media certainly hurt me. But no, I do not abuse children. No, I am not a conspiracy theorist. No, I am not misinformed, or I don't have bad intentions. And no, I'm not dangerous, and I shouldn't be profoundly deluded. And no, I am not a public threat when it comes to the health of my children or other children. And no, I'm not trying to become famous. Believe me, it took all I got to be here today to share my concerns with you. I'm a great mom. Should this bill pass, will it make me have to move from New Brunswick to another province with more awareness towards vaccines? What about Policy 322, saying that all children in New Brunswick deserve an equal education, no matter what? And this is in the Education Act. And there are no particular groups, like groups of people vaccinated and not vaccinated. I pay my taxes. So who will help my family if I cannot send my children to school? Who is going to school them? Who will pay 100% of all the education resources that they have access to in a school, like a computer and art and music teachers? And this homeschooling was not a choice for my family. There is a health issue and an education issue, but I will not put my children's health after their education. So thank you for listening to me, and please respect my choice and respect all the parents who have seen their families suffer, but who hear constantly that they are not well informed. You have not walked in their shoes. People who know me personally know that I do a lot of research, and I will never do anything that compromises my health and the health of my children. There are always two sides to a debate, especially when it comes to vaccines, because immunization is a preventive treatment.
Size does not fit all. Mon corps, mon choix.
My body, my choice. Thank you.
Again, I will caution the public that applause will cut into time, so simply be cognizant of that, because we are going to make great efforts to stay on time today. Madame, je m'excuse, ma français est pauvre.
I am sorry, but my French is not great. It's okay, you can speak English. Where do you live in St. John?
Pardon?
What prompted you to be?
For what reason? The reason is for my children, because I am a mother and I have a lot of concerns when it comes to what is happening right now, and also what will happen in the future. I feel like should this act pass, this will change everything I thought about my future, because I will have to stay home to homeschool my children, because it is not an option for me to vaccinate my children. And I speak from the heart, but since May, I've been feeling a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. And some nights I have a hard time sleeping because I always have this issue in my head, to the point that we are even thinking about moving away from New Brunswick. And I love New Brunswick, but this is too high a risk for me to have my children vaccinated. No, it's not an option for us. Are there any other questions? First of all, thank you so much for being here.
Presentation.
Thank you.
And I know it's not easy, so thank you.
Thank you.
One of my first questions, because we didn't know what perspective you were going to come from, was why are you here? But I think you made that very clear. So thank you. I just want to try to paraphrase what I think is your position, and can you correct me if I have something wrong?
Yep.
So you're primarily against mandatory vaccine because you believe that you are properly informed with the peer-reviewed quality research data, and you made an informed choice with consent according to your right, that you can choose to avoid taking this preventive recommended treatment as a vaccine. And primarily because you've done the research, you think making this mandatory without allowance for informed consent to deny is wrong. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so are there any other ways? Like, I know you're from your position, it's kind of hard to even ask this, but from your position, it seems like even though many people are saying the more people who are vaccinated, the better, and the more people who are vaccinated, the more healthy the population, if you don't believe that assumption, it's hard to go forward and be part of that. So what could be done for a society to be on the same understanding? What is a barrier, from your perspective, to adequate research that informs a common understanding?
Honnêtement, c'est difficile de...
Frankly, it's difficult to give a precise answer because there are so many things at play. It's such a large issue that even if it's a subject that is quite delicate and it's taboo almost, because fairly often I feel as if I'm being judged for my choice rather, so I prefer not to speak about it. And I'm here. It took everything for me to get here today. And it's the same thing that's happening with other people, because I'm not the only one. I know a lot of people who would have liked to be here today, but by fear of prejudice, by discrimination, they decided to not speak. So it's a bit sad to find out that we're at the point where people are afraid to come and try to settle a problem and to find solutions together. It's almost as if there really is a clear line between the two. And it is difficult to agree on the same resolutions because I feel, I can't speak for us, but I feel as if it is something that is going to be forced on us. So then what's going to happen? Who are going to be the next people? And so we know that the next people on the list are going to be the people who are in education. And then who are going to be on the list for education is all citizens will have to obtain the required vaccinations, because we know that 80% of adults do not have the recommended vaccinations. So it is difficult to say what I would do or what should be done. But we have to try to find agreement between both parties in order to talk about the situation, because I'm open to listen the other side, but some people on the other side are not ready or open to listen to our point of view, for example. So that's what the problem is. So it is really, how can I say it? It's communication and the fact that it is a subject that is a major issue, a major file, because a lot of people have very strong opinions on this issue, and this is where it's difficult. It's not to try to change people's minds, but to try to be able to understand so that I can understand them, to find a happy medium for everybody. But it's difficult to answer your question directly and to say what I would do, because what I can do might not mean that it might be good for everybody. So if you understand my meaning. Thank you very much. I understand as a sociologist that the position of minority groups and common ideas are afraid to speak because they're afraid of being judged.
We are close to the end
Okay.
of our time.
All right,
if you don't
I'll
mind.
just finish this one sentence. Do you think that because Canada does not have a compensation injury program, that it impacts the accountability of the industry? And I'll end with that.
Oui et non, dans le sens...
Yes and no, in the sense that even if there is a compensation plan, it doesn't change my way of seeing things, and it would not change the fact that my children would have to be immunized or not. So even if there's a compensation plan put in place, my choice would nevertheless be the same. But it's just to put something for families who are going to have children who are going to be injured by vaccination.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
I thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I don't have a question, but I'd like to say thank you very much for your presentation. You have a lot of passion, and I know that it is very difficult to make a presentation in front of such a group, but you made a very good presentation. And you have a lot of support in your friends, and be safe in your work. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for appearing here today, and your friends and everyone else as well. It was a very passionate presentation, and I very much appreciate that. And you've obviously have done some homework. You've done a lot of research, and I'm going to ask you to help me with something. The CDC in Canada, is it the same as the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia?
If it's the same in Canada?
Yeah.
Juste, honnêtement, pour répondre...
Frankly, to answer your question, I don't know if it's the same, if they're affiliated or if they're the same, they use the same things. But I don't believe, having seen the site for CDC Canada per se.
Because when you search vaccinations in New Brunswick and stuff, at the end of the link it says CDC. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get a connection whether they're Health Canada and CDC are in cohorts kind of thing with the U.S. That's all. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation today.
Merci.